Hi there, today I want to talk about how to build a profitable pricing list for portrait studios. This is probably the most common question that I get is how to price your services. From my experience, most photographers either underprice things, or they overcomplicate things, or they underprice and overcomplicate things just to make things worse. So what I want to show you in this video today is the nuts and bolts on how to do it, how to create a price list going forward that works for both for you and your clients and that works. So before we get into it, let me just explain to you what we'll be covering in these videos. A full step-by-step pricing system that works, okay? I want to give you some real examples and some of the logic behind those numbers, okay? So you can see how all that works. And also what I will also do is in the description is I'll timestamp all the separate sections. So if you do want to jump ahead, if you don't want to hear me talk about certain things, you can jump ahead to those sections. Or if you do want to revisit this video, because there's going to be quite a lot of information here, that way you can find those sections easily if you need to. But if this is your first time in my channel or first time in seeing how this sort of thing connects, I do recommend watching the whole thing from start to finish. So I would encourage you to do that to get the most out of it. But if you're new to the channel, my name is Richard. I'm a full-time photographer here in Australia. I own this studio with my wife. Our studio turns over multiple six figures per annum, and we're working our way towards $1 million turnover per annum. And I make these videos because I really enjoy talking about the business of photography, and in the interest of transparency, I am working on creating a personal brand because I do have visions of becoming a speaker and educator. So the first thing, let's understanding the session fee. So first of all, if you don't know what a session fee is or a sitting fee, it's called a few things, but let's call it a session fee. A session fee is what you charge for your expertise. And they're all different, okay? So in our case as a boudoir studio, for our example, ours has hair and makeup. We spend a lot longer in the studio than a lot of other times. So ours is a whole day experience, okay? So everyone's is a little bit different. Now, I think that one of the things you need to consider when determining your session fee is not to make it too much. Now, I know this sounds counterintuitive to what I've taught before when you need to put your prices up. But one of the problems that you have is if you have it too high, okay, people start to expect that you get things with it. So I would encourage you to keep your session fee low and then make your money on the back end on sales. Now, let me give you a couple of examples of that. So in our case, our session fee as a boudoir studio is $500, okay? That covers professional hair and makeup. You get drinks and snacks and alcohol and access to this and a whole day in the studio. So when people hear that and we explain to them that's what they get, it then becomes unreasonable for them to expect getting photographs and products with it, okay? Now, if you're more of a family photographer or if you do pets or something like that and it's a bit more condensed, like say for example, you're doing, I don't know, let's say you're doing 5 shoots on a Saturday, okay? Let's just say that. Then a reasonable amount for the session fee might be, $100 or $150, because it would be unreasonable for people to expect to come to a studio, a professional studio, or on location or whatever it is you do, and expect to get photographs with it. So you just need to think about what you're comfortable conveying the amount for that amount for people to be low enough for them to not include photographs. Now, I know that a lot of people will shake their heads at that thinking, and they will think that, no, I need to cover my expenses and my fees and everything like that with my session fee. And that's fine if you want to do that. I'm not arguing with you. You can do whatever you want. But what I am saying is that my experience has been that if you, just say in our case, if we make our session fee $1,500, it's difficult to explain all your value up front. You're better off just saying something like, look, this is what we charge. You don't get any photographs with this. This is what we charge as a fee for time and makeup, or in our case, and we just allow you to purchase whatever you love at the end of it. I think that's an easy way to do it. But as long as it's low enough in your area or your country or whatever, where it makes sense that is low enough for people not to think they're going to be getting stuff for it. So I would approach the session fee personally. And furthermore to that, I think that by having a lower session fee, in my opinion, it just creates less friction to get them through the door because they don't know what they don't know yet. You know what I mean? You need to put them through your experience, whatever your experience is, to demonstrate the value of what you do. And once they go through that, they'll be far more inclined to spend more money on the back end. But by having a massive amount up front or trying to pre-sell stuff up front, I'm not against pre-selling stuff up front, don't get me wrong. But when you're just booking in random people who have come in, from either advertising or from your webpage or something like that, it's just a whole lot easier to do it like that. So I want to talk about the power of luxury pricing. Now, I talked about this quite extensively in another video, which I strongly encourage you to watch if you haven't seen it. I go through my history of pricing in business just in general, and what I learned and all the mistakes that I made in regards to setting pricing. And I talk about that in a very sort of general terms. I think it's worth watching. I've crammed 25 years of business experience into 20 minutes there. So I strongly encourage you to watch it. But so I won't go on about it too much here, but in a nutshell, the first thing is higher pricing or luxury pricing gives a perception of value. Like people will think there's something better going on. It's human nature. It's people are weird like that. If they see higher prices, they think, oh, well, there must be something good going on here. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this might feel counterintuitive, but when you're priced higher, you actually makes it easier to book people, in my opinion. Okay. Because if your pricing is in the masses, then you're competing with everyone else. But when your pricing is really above everyone else's, then people think, oh, there must be something else going on here. It's a human thing, okay? And so all of a sudden, you're no longer competing on price. You're competing on experience and value, okay? That's a really important distinction. Now, obviously, to state the complete obvious, you're not going to appeal to everyone. That's impossible. But you're not going to appeal to everyone anyway. If you're in the bottom end of the market competing on price, someone's always going to beat you, and it'll always be a race to the bottom. So I think you should get into the luxury pricing model. Okay. So again, I'm repeating myself, but go back and watch that video that I've got linked in the description. The final thing I do want to mention about luxury pricing is it enables profit and flexibility. Okay. It's really important to understand that. Like, it gives you the ability to trade profitably and grow and thrive and do a good job and give your clients a good service. So there's that. I won't harp any more on it than that, but that I just want to just touch upon that just briefly here and encourage you to go and check all that stuff out. So the next thing is I want to talk about keeping it simple, keeping your pricing as simple as humanly possible. Now, I can't take credit for this thinking. I learned this specifically from a fellow called Steve Saporetto, who's a friend of mine, and he taught me simplicity in pricing, and I 100% agree with him. Because like if you present essentially a Chinese menu, you know, like with 8 million things on it, people are just overwhelmed and people don't understand it anyway. So you might as well just reduce it right down to the smallest amount possible. Okay, I know it seems counterintuitive, but the more simple you make it, the more the people will spend and the more people will buy. And I find this especially true if you're in the world of same day in-person sales, which is what we do. You've got to be careful you don't fatigue your clients with too many decisions to make. Okay, that's really important because they do get to this point where they just can't make any more decisions. They're burnt out with decision making. So if you're presenting them with complex price lists, which you think are clever, you know, it's got lots of stuff, and often what I've noticed is that I think that a lot of the time that these complex price lists that photographers make, they're trying to be fair. You know what I mean? They're trying to present all the value options to their clients, but the irony is that you're making it worse for them. I promise you that people just don't understand half of it for a start and then can't make a decision. So by narrowing it right down, and my suggestion is to sell what you love. Okay, so if you love canvas and metal, sell canvas and metal. You know what I mean? Just keep it really simple. If you love gallery style frames with glass, and sell that. You will sell more effectively what it is you love to your clients, and your clients will borrow your confidence on what it is you love selling. Okay, so let's talk about creating the actual price list. So step one is you need to set up your base price on a photograph. Okay, so now you can do this any way you want. Okay, this is I can't tell you what to do. Now what I'm about to give you here are just examples. Okay, and you can massage these figures into what works for you. But I would encourage you to step outside your comfort zone and start pricing up to where you want to be. Okay, in other words, what you need to do, in my opinion, is reverse engineer where you want to be income wise and what you want your minimum sale to be. I hope that makes sense. That might be a discussion for another day. But if you want your minimum sale to be $2,000, you need to structure your pricing and your individual image pricing to match that. And if you're not familiar with this at all, I would encourage you to kind of be in the ballpark of what I'm about to suggest here. Okay, so what we need to do is base everything on the first price. Okay, so my suggestion would be to make your base price for a 5x7 or 8x10 or 11x14. It doesn't really. The differences are so marginal. It doesn't really matter. I would encourage you to base it on that. I like mine to be $250, okay, for a single photograph, okay, and that can be either as a printed thing or a digital, which I'll get into a little bit later, but just I know that people are going to be scratching their heads about that out of the gate. So that's step one. Okay, now let me go to step two, is build your collections based around that price. Okay, so if we look at this, okay, so you've got your one image at 250. Now, like I said, it doesn't have to be 250. You can make that 200, you can make that 150, you can make it 300, you can make it 500. I don't care what you make it, but you need to then create your collection sliding around that base price in a way that makes sense. So you might go, all right, one image is 250, okay? And you've got 8 images, for example, at 1400, okay? So now if you multiply 8 by 250, that obviously equals 2000. So that when people are looking at this, they go, okay, one is 250, but if I get 8, then that's only 1400. Okay, so all of a sudden you're leveraging up from your base price. Okay, then you might go 15 images is 2200. Okay, and that might be your sweet spot in the middle. Okay, so that might be where you want to land with the majority of your clients. Again, so it's getting less and less the more that they buy, and then 25 images might be 3200. Okay. So but by going up like that, you're creating more value. And what you could do is, like, for example, the way that I choose to do it, now just in the interest of transparency, I don't personally choose to present the 8 image example in this, okay? I don't want to be selling that personally. I put that in my back pocket as a back pocket offer if I need it, meaning if they go, oh my God, I can't do that, I can then pull that out and then present that to them in some shape or form like that, okay? But just because we have certain things, it doesn't mean we have to present them, okay? That's really important. Like, for example, no, I'll get to that in a minute, actually. Okay, but what you can do is, so like the 8 images could just be a pile of 8 by 10s or 11 by 14s or whatever, and your 15 images and 25 images might be a portrait box, okay, that you can get from all sorts of, most suppliers have them, or it could be an album from Graphy, or, in my case, I get them from Queensbury in New Zealand, okay? I'm not a New Zealander, by the way, just to put that to rest. But wherever you get them from, and that could be the pull through to get people to take the next step. They go, oh, gee whiz, I get these extra images and I get the box or the album or whatever the case may be, okay? So there's that. But can you see how I'm setting up the pricing to encourage people to buy more? But honestly, you need to make your lowest amount. Okay, so in this case, if you choose to present the 8 image option, for example, you need to make that whatever you're comfortable with being your lowest sale. Okay, that's important. That gets back to reverse engineering where you want to be per annum or per sale or however you're figuring this out. Okay, now you'd be surprised. Not many people will get just the individual items. Okay, in fact, I kind of don't even really get into that when they come into the studio. I just talk about the image collections. Okay, so that's step 1. Now, step 2 is with your albums and boxes and so on, okay, I think it's really, really important, okay, to make them the same price. Now, what you'll find is that when you go out and start pricing out your stuff, so say, for example, you go to, let's say we go to Graphy, okay, because they're a big one that everyone's aware of, kind of. So you might find that your albums from Graphy are cheaper than your portrait boxes from someone like Global Image or 3XM or somewhere like that, okay? But even though they're different prices, I strongly, strongly encourage you to make them the same price so that when the time comes to make a decision, you're removing some of the decision fatigue, okay? Meaning they will then just enable them to buy whatever they want. So all of a sudden you get away because they go, oh, is that the same price? And I go, oh, okay. And then they then flip into the decision-making process of which one they want, not which one they're trying to get rid of based on price or value or whatever. And if you're worried about people quizzing you on why they're the same price, honestly, it just never happens. I promise you. It just never, ever, ever happens. Well, it's never happened to me, put it that way, not for years. You might get the occasional analytical type who's like a chartered accountant or a scientist or something like that wants to know, okay. But it's usually from their point of view, it's just a curiosity thing. They just need to understand these things. And if they do ask that, again, this never happens. But if they do, I would just tell them the truth. I say, look, there's so little price difference between the two. I decided to make them the same price to keep it simple, to help people decide and to get what they want to get. So there's that. Now, the next question is the digital questions. Now, what we do here is you will get that question a lot. Now, it either means one of two things. Okay, either they want to get them cheaper. Okay, I think that's the case a lot of the time, or they just want digitals. They want them for their phone or whatever the case may be. So the way that I overcome that and the way that I present that is two ways. I'll say to them, look, we normally save this as a surprise when people collect their artwork, okay? But when people ask us about digitals, what they're usually asking about is they want something for their phone so they can put it on social media, or they can put, send it to their loved ones or friends, or show it off to their friends, or whatever the case may be. So what we do is we provide a copy of whatever it is you get, should it be for the wall or in a box or an album, or whatever the case may be. We provide an exact copy of those in an app format for your phone. Let me show you that real quick. We use a service called Pixieset. They primarily provide online galleries, but they also can provide it like, it's not a true app. Like, you don't go to the App Store and download it, you install it to your phone and it puts an icon on your desk. And it looks like this, okay? So it looks like that, and then you click on that. It's not focusing, sorry about that, guys. But basically then it presents a gallery of photographs like that. From here they can save them to their reel and all that type of thing. And I find that to be a way of overcoming that. And then I also go and say, look, if you want the digitals, you're more than welcome to the digitals. We do sell digitals, okay? And you can have them in full resolution with unlimited print rights. And just to keep it really simple, they're the same price as if you buy them as printed works, okay? Difference being is you get them in full resolution and you can do whatever you want with them, okay? You can either print them, you can put them on a billboard if you feel like it. We don't care what you do with them, but you are welcome then to do them, but they're the same price. And that's how I tackle the digital question. That gets you over the hump of the digital question. It enables you to reframe the question that they're asking and present it in a way that represents value. Now, the next thing is add-on images. Okay, so let's make the assumption that you've got the people in and that you've got them settled in a collection of some sort. And then you can start adding in photos. Now, you're getting into pure profit land here a little bit. For you to add in extra photos to a portrait box or an album or something like that, the bulk of that expense has already been paid for, obviously. Okay, so this is where you can sort of start getting a bit more creative. So like my pricing model's always been based on $100 per extra photo. Okay. So what you can do there is you can do, if you want to, is you can say to them, look, you can have an extra 10 photographs for $800 or something like that. And they go, okay, cool. And it just gives them, it's just a way forward. But the point I'm making here is, but when you get into that territory, that's when you really start making some really good money. And that gets, and this is where photographers go wrong, in my opinion, is they will say, all right, you can have all the digitals or all the whatever for $500. They go out and do that. Honestly, you're just killing yourselves. Like, I don't know why you would do that. And this enables you to make really big sales. This gets you, this gets you into sort of between $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 sales. And when you hear about people doing those sales, this is generally how they're doing it, but by selling lots more photos and lots more wall art. I'll get to the wall art in a minute, but that's a really good strategy. And the other thing too is you can gift photographs to close a sale. Like, for example, you might be, let's just say you're at your big package, okay, and so say it's 25 photographs, and they're looking and they can't choose, but they've got another, let's say 10 photographs they can't choose from, and you've been through and they can't. So you can say, look, I want you to have all the photographs, okay. And what I would like to do is, if you're prepared to buy 5, I'm prepared to gift you 5 for free. So if you pay another $500, I'm prepared to gift you another 5. Now, the reason I personally choose to do it like that is because my dad taught me, who was in the car trade for years. He owned car dealerships. He owned BMW and Nissan and these types of things. Okay. He taught me in the old days that, he goes, people will remember gifts, but they don't remember discounts. And I find that to be 100% true, 100% true, okay? So it's interesting. They will remember the gift, but not the discount. So I would much rather gift things to close sales rather than discount to close sales. Because if you start discounting to close sales, then they'll start to think, hang on, well, what if I got the best deal that I could? You know what I mean? Like the difference between the two is pretty stark. And you can do the same from the other ones as well. So if you're stuck on the lower, on that lower package, the middle, like the one of 15 or something like that, you can say, oh, look, if you want to get another 6, I'm prepared to give you 3 for free if you buy another 3. And you can kind of massage the figures like that. But I would strongly encourage you not to discount when you're working in a luxury model like this. It just doesn't go well. All right, the next step. is pricing wall art. Now, this is a little bit easier in my opinion, okay? But what I would strongly encourage you to do, is reduce it down to 4 pieces. Okay, now in our studio we have essentially, I've got special names for them. Essentially, it could be small, medium, large, and large. Dead simple. In our case, going from memory here, we go 16 by 20, 20 by 30, 30 by 40, and 40 by 60. They're the 4 sizes. They're in inches, obviously. Okay, they're the 4 sizes that we do. But keep it really, really simple, and keep the selection of finishes simple as well. I strongly encourage you either to have 1 finish or 2 finishes at the most. So in our case, we have frame canvas, that's what we choose to do, or in a frame with glass. Doesn't really matter what it is, just choose what you love. Like you might really love metals. God bless you. You know, if you want to do metals, make it metals. But here's a trick. I would strongly encourage you to make them the same price for either one. So for example, if you price your 16 by 20 or 20 by 30 or whatever, let's say you price it at 1,500, let's just use that as a price. Make it the same price whether it's a metal or a canvas. Okay, now I know the metal will be more than the canvas, but it doesn't matter. Just keep it simple so people don't have that decision-making fatigue that I talked about before. Now, you're probably thinking, hang on a minute, the metal cost me more, I'm going to lose money. No, what you do is you price it from the price of the metal and land at your final price. And then if you happen to sell a canvas, then you just make some more money on the way through. Now, a good way to do it is to multiply by 5. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. So let's just say, for example, a framed thing from your printer, right? Let's just say for the sake of argument, it's $200. Then a good place to start is to price that at $1,000. If a piece that you're buying from your supplier is $300, then it's a good idea to price that at $1,500. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly 5 times, okay? But that's where you can start, and that's where you can start massaging your prices around it. And again, it's got to kind of make sense, because I don't know whether you guys ever find this, but you find these weird incremental jumps. Like if you go 35 by 35 in a square, there's this weird jump to 40 by 40. So you might just look at these logically and look at those jumps. So like, for example, our jumps are, just going off the top of my head here, 950, 1450, 2200, 3500. Those jumps kind of make logical sense when you're in our reception area out there looking at the wall art. Okay, so I encourage you to do that. But the really big thing is make them the same price, I promise you. It just makes it so much easier and it removes some of that decision-making fatigue. Okay, just one thing to watch is watch your hidden costs. Okay, make sure when you're factoring your cost of goods, okay, so because it's easy to look at your price lists that you get from your suppliers or on their websites or whatever, don't forget to factor in freight. Okay, so let's just say, for example, a piece is costing you $150, but is costing you $30 in freight. You need to factor in the freight as a cost. So in other words, you need to base your 5 times factor thing that I just explained based off $180, not $150. Now, don't forget retouching. If you're like us and outsource your retouching, in our case, and let's just use $5 per image as a round number. Okay, so when you're factoring in your pricing, don't forget to factor in that this is more relevant. Like, you know, $5 an image when you're doing single piece wall art is insignificant. It sort of disappears. But when you're doing, if you're doing albums and boxes and things like that, just keep an eye on that as one of your costs of doing business. So, like, for example, if you're doing an album or a box with 15 photographs in it, and let's say each image costs you $5 to get retouched by a professional retoucher, you need to add in that, $75 into your cost of goods as well. So just watch those, watch that you don't, because what you want to do is you want to create this price list once and forget about it for a long time, like for years. You want to do it once and then kind of just forget about it. Now, the next thing is what you can do is you can incentivize extra purchases. Now, in our case, because we're a boudoir studio and we specialize in boudoir, we find that the majority of the time that women will buy boxes of photographs or albums of photographs due to the sensitive nature of them. And what I mean by that, because we do a lot of nudes and we do a lot of risque stuff, it's not necessarily stuff that they want to put on their wall because they've got teenage kids or nosy mother-in-laws or they're shy or whatever the reason is. So in our case, our base thing is always selling images or boxes of images or albums full of photographs or whatever. So what I do is made our pricing so that if I offer discounts, I land to where I want to be with our pricing. Let me explain that. What I'm saying is that I say to them, look, if you buy a collection, okay, in an album or a box, we're trying to encourage women to put photographs on their wall so that they can feel that empowerment and confidence every day. And I mean it when I say this too, by the way. I'm a strong believer in this. I wish all women would do it, to be truthful. They don't because they're shy, but I wish they would because it does make a difference. And I'm basing that on the feedback I've got from my clients. But I say to them, look, well, I'm offering 30% off any of the wall art if you buy a collection. Okay. And I frame it up like that. Now, I know that I'm contradicting myself from what I said before about giving discounts, but this is, you're setting the terms in advance. You're not reacting, trying to close deals with discounts. You're the one setting the terms out of the gate, and that's the difference. It's a very, very strong difference in that. Okay, and so let me explain that. So I've got all mine set up to land where I want to land after discounts. So let's say it's $1,000. Okay, and so I give 30% off, and I land at $700. So what that means is just roughly, whatever 700 divided by 5 equals, I don't know what that would equal. You guys can do the maths. That's how much I want to be paying for that piece, including freight and landing it here, okay? It is around about that. What would that be? 5 times 150, that'd be about 750, wouldn't it? This is not right, but it's about 150-ish, isn't it? 140-ish, somewhere around about that price there. So that's what I'm going to be paying for that by the time I get it here. And that way then I retain my margins going forward. And then if people do come in and buy just the wall art, that's fine. I'm kind of covered there as well. That doesn't happen very often in my case. Now, if you're a family photographer or a pet photographer, you'll find that you will sell mainly wall art. Okay, that was my experience when I was doing families and pets and things like that. That the majority of the time I would sell wall art. So I would want, in that case, if you're in that camp, I would incentivize selling the portrait boxes. So same concept is I would be offering discounts on the portrait boxes. Okay, and the way you frame it up is you say, look, 99% of the families who come in here, want to get something for their wall. And what we're trying to do is so people can get more photographs if they wish, where we're offering 30% off these collections, and that's how you present it. So you just got to massage it into your genre, I promise you. The next thing is price list presentation. Now, what you want to do here, in my opinion, if you do have to have a price list, and let me explain that in a minute, but it should be very elegant and simple. And my best example would be like a fine dining price list at a fancy restaurant. And I'll show you that in the screen in a minute. Okay, what you don't want to do is not have your price list look like where you go and buy your artwork from now, okay? Because there'll be too many options. You need to keep it simple. Now, in our case, we only have 6 things, so I don't need to have a printed price list because I can just verbalize it because it's all in my memory. I've only got, for example, I've got the one, actually no, 6 things. I beg your pardon. So I've got my individual thing at $250, okay? And then I've got a collection of 15. I've got a collection of 25, okay? And they're the same prices whether you get a book or a box or whatever. And I've got 4 sizes in the artwork. Now, I'll give you a visual representation of mine so you can take inspiration from it to get an idea from it. I'm not suggesting you copy mine. You need to make it work for you and your area and your confidence levels. But the point being is, don't make it look like a Chinese menu. That's the big thing. Again, I'm repeating myself, but the simpler you keep this, the more sales you'll make. And you will eliminate that thing of people wanting to go away and think about it because there's nothing to think about, okay? Now, I'm not saying you'll get rid of it completely, but you'll greatly reduce it because you're removing decision-making fatigue, okay? And so this is what mine looks like here. And so as you can see, it's super duper simple. Running through it, so as you can see, I've got the portrait collections, I've got the single print, I've got 15 prints, and I've got additional portraits at $100 each. And then I step up to a handmade New Zealand album with 25 and additional portraits at 100 each. And then I've got wall art, I've got classic, signature, grand and impact, 950, 1450, 2200 and 3500. Then I've got custom wall art. Now just briefly mentioning the custom wall art, what I'm talking about there is it getting a bit outside the scope of this, but I've got in the studio some really big super fancy things on the wall that I've got priced at 5,900 and 6,900. And the reason I've got them there is essentially to act as price anchors. So I've got these big, expensive pieces that I don't have in my pricing menu, okay, that price anchors everything and makes everything else seem cheaper. And I would encourage you to investigate that. That's a bit more advanced beyond the topic of what I'm talking about here. So I kind of just mentioned this before. Focus on what you want to sell. Don't show everything. You know, you've got other things. Like you can make things custom sizes if they wish. I get this quite a bit. You know, they'll say, I've already got this certain size. Can you make a certain size to match? I go, that's fine. And I just basically match it up to the pricing of those other pieces on the wall, on my 4-wall one. But you don't have to have everything listed. Like I choose not to have that lower collection listed like a lot of people do. And I find that by removing that, you end up just automatically selling the one that you want to sell. Before I wrap this up, I want to talk about a couple of things. And a lot of you might, if you've made it this far, congratulations. It's a big video and there's a lot to talk about. But you might be thinking, you might be having doubts and thinking, you know, this would never work in my area. You know, my clients are too tight, you know, blah, 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 blah. There's all these thoughts. And so if you're thinking those things, I strongly encourage you to start working on your mindset and start trying to work on an abundance mindset. Because what you'll find is that your clients will borrow your confidence from your pricing. Okay, if you're confident in how you present this stuff to your clients, they will borrow that confidence from you. Go, oh well, that's just what it is, and that honestly, that's what happens here. Okay, but that can be a difficult thing to get to if you're not used to this. I hear this all the time in Facebook groups, and that is, oh, you know, people in my area would never do this. Now, just to put things in perspective, I'm in an area which is one of the highest cost of living places in the whole world. Seriously, the whole damn world. I remember hearing this years ago, a report on the radio that the area I live in was in the top 20 most expensive places to live per capita, and taking wages and rents and house prices, everything into account in the whole world, in the whole world. And the area I live in, when I don't even live in the city where people make more money, and I achieve these prices. And I know people that live in regional areas with very small markets that achieve these sorts of prices. So if you're saying those things to yourself, that, you know, my people wouldn't pay those prices, those types of things, I promise you, I really do, I absolutely promise you, it's just you. It's just your thinking. It's going to, again, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it's counterintuitive. It's just as, how can I put it? It's just as easy to book people with high prices as it is to book people with low prices. And I would actually argue that it's easier to book people with high prices than it is with low prices. Now, if you do need help with mindset, I would encourage you to read some books. There's lots of books out there, but just to get started, I would encourage you to read things like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's an excellent book. It's a really old book. It's ancient. And one of the more modern books is You Are a Badass at Making Money by a lady called Jen Sincero. And I'll put these in the description as well. I would encourage you to read those. And failing that, maybe get a coach to help you with abundance mindset. If you do need anyone, let me know. I might be able to point you in that direction. But if you want to DIY it for a little while, maybe look into those. My final thoughts is, now you can adapt this any way you want. Okay, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I'm only telling you what's worked for me and what's worked for other people I've taught. Okay, but I would encourage you to work roughly within these pricings that I've presented in here if you want to have a business that's awesome. Okay. I do it very much like this, very, very, very much like this, and we consistently have $50,000 to $60,000 months. Okay, consistently, and that's the trick, because you want to be consistent. Like, I'm not talking about jagging the occasional client, and I see this a lot in the business forums. Okay, in the photography business forums, is they'll say, "Oh, I had this $10,000 client. I'm really happy, and I really need it because I had to pay the bills." And I think, well, that's great. But there's something wrong if you're having to rely on these on these whale customers who can, you know, meet your expenses and things like that. You want to be able to, like, get your averages to where you want to be. And I kind of touched on this at the beginning. Like, I like my average to be in between $3,000 to $4,000. And that way, to state the obvious, I don't need huge amounts of clients to get to my, $50,000 to $60,000. I'm getting into navel gazing a little bit here, but I strongly encourage you, if you've made it this far, obviously this appeals to you, and obviously you're thinking about it. And I would encourage you to take that mentality: if nothing changes, nothing changes. Meaning, if you continue to, if you continue to do what you're doing and not making any money, then that sucks. I think that everyone deserves to, to earn a decent income and have a sustainable business that you can invest in and grow with. You can provide for your family. You can have investments and have a really high standard of living and charge a professional fee. I think everyone deserves that. And I think that, I would want you to have whatever your definition of success is. Like, now, not everyone wants to make $1 million like me, and that's that's absolutely fine. Your definition of success might be, to make, I don't know, to make $3,000 a week doing 2 shoots and spend the rest of your time in a dressing gown watching reruns of The Simpsons. Whatever you want to do, I don't care whatever it is you want to do, that's fine. I'm not here to judge, I don't care. But whatever your definition of success is, I want you to achieve that. And I think the only way you can do that in the world of portraits is by adopting, something like this, which is a luxury business model. So that's it. I want to leave it there. Hopefully you got something out of this. It's a lot of information, I know. It's something I've been meaning to do for a long time. I was trying to figure out a way to present it in a way that made sense. I hope it did make sense. I really do. And if you're a shoot and burner, I'm not judging you at all. I think that's great, but I would encourage you to look into something like this a little bit more. I don't want to see anyone burn out. I want you to have the life you want to have as a photographer and actually live the dream. I'm living proof that you can do it. I flipped into photography not that long ago. Like, I did my first wedding in 2017 for $100, and this is where we are today. I've just simply taken all my previous business experience and all the things I've learned from various friends and mentors in photography and mashed it all into this. And I really hope you got a lot out of it. Don't be scared to leave any questions. If you did get something out of this, I would love you to like this video and leave a comment. That would be wonderful. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I'd love you to subscribe to the channel. Leisure, that really helps. I thank you for watching, and I'll leave it there. Thank you again. Have a great week, and keep on trucking and keep on smiling. Thank you again.